And when the people ask me, Dr. Anderson, why is it that we're always on the bottom? Well, you're on there for a very specific reason. First is because we don't understand that game, and it's been a game ever since the founding of the country. And we never understood the game. And the game is that the major societies in this country have ways of excluding you intentionally without you knowing it. They use very broad, and here they've used very broad and ambiguous terms to give the pretense that you include, and inclusion, at the same time you're being excluded. They use code words to make sure that you're never getting, your condition will never change. And let's start going through it and show you what I mean. Let's go back to the Constitution as an example. The Articles of Confederation that were put up in the 1600s said very specifically that they're going to start a slavery system in the United States. And they want to figure out which population they're going to use, but I think they've always been messed around with the black population. And in 1650, they started trying to work around enslaved black folk. And the population of whites coming in the country, pouring into the country. By 1750, the population of this country for black folk were up to 35%. White folks had already gotten alarm about that. And so back in the 1600s, about 1642 as an example, go back to show you, they started passing laws to try to restrict the number of blacks coming into this country. Why? Because they wanted you to be a minority. And that's why, and later on, when they drew up the Constitution, the first act in the Constitution was what's called the first naturalization and immigration law. That says there's a zero quota on blacks coming into the country, but it'll be a white country for white Europeans only. Now, in the Constitution, here's how the coding started work. The coding came up, they says, all the people. Every time the white society says all the people, we the people, the American people, they are not talking about you. You are the people to be excluded. That's why in the Constitution, there's no place in the Constitution, not in one instance, does it ever mention the word slave. Never does it include the word slavery. Whenever they want to start talking about black folk in the Constitution, starting out in the 1600s, 1700s, what they said is they use very broad and ambiguous terms to relate to black folk. Like those who are indebted, those who are abundant, those that species of property. To make sure that what they're deciding, and they use this when they met to form the Constitution in Philadelphia in 1779, when all the so-called founding fathers got together, what they said is this: let's not taint this document we're getting ready to create called the Constitution. Let's not taint it talking about slavery or about slaves. We're getting ready to screw over some people, but we don't want anybody to know about it. We want to leave no fingerprints. No fingerprints should be left on what we're getting ready to do. This is fact. For the first 3 days in the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, they kept the doors locked while they all debated whether or not slave and slavery should show up in the Constitution, and what terms they should use. And they went out of their way to say that nobody ought to use those terms. We would use very broad, ambiguous terms. So when Thomas Jefferson rewrote the Constitution, he had to write it 3 times to make sure that there was nothing left in there, no fingerprints left of what was going to happen to a certain group of people. And so when you read the Constitution, it says, we the people, you just had it. All the people, you just had it. When the Constitution said that all men are created equal, they weren't talking about you. Because at the same time the Constitution said all the people are equal. They had already classified in the Constitution that you would be a 3/5 of a human being. They weren't talking about you. But somehow my people never understand that. They talk about the Constitution, what they call the founding fathers. The founding fathers knew the game. They set that up in the Constitution so that they can always track that with no fingerprints. When they said in the Constitution, for instance, that all people are created equal. They've been endowed by their God to have inalienable rights. To what? To life, liberty, and what? No, that's what it got you again. It wasn't for the pursuit of happiness. It was pursuit of property. They switched on you. Initially, it started out being, it was supposed to be the pursuit of property. Nobody on this earth got past the third grade with unthinking people, white folk, that foolish to come across the oceans in 3 months and sailing on a boat with barely enough food and water to live and come to the United States looking for happiness. But my people don't understand that. They go read, yeah, we're here for life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. No, it was life, liberty, pursuit of property, because the Constitution laid out black folk as property. 3/5 of a human being, you were classified as property, equal to an animal, a field animal, a beast of the field. That was the purpose of it. And black folk were set out on that. Then later on, as you got into as the Constitution moved through and was ratified in 1789, and in 1790 they put in the whole thing about immigration. And what they want to do is bring in whites then. And they came in with a concept that you all talk about now and hear about, called the American Dream. What is the American Dream? All blacks are, well, one day we're going to be a part of America. You can't be a part of the American Dream. You were the dream. Whites were coming to this country looking for two things that made up the American dream: free Indian land and free black labor. So all these immigrants coming to America, what are they coming here for? For the American dream. Now, they can no longer get the land they used to get, because when whites came into the country, they got free land based on how many slaves they owned. On that, what they call a headship right, every white could pick up 640 acres of land for every slave he owned. Free. 640 acres. Then they had head rights. They also had land grants. They owned as much land as far as they could see. And now when you go out up in the West and all around this country, you see whites own these vast tracts of land. 1,000 acres, 20,000 acres of land. They didn't pay for that land. It was unearned benefits. Wall Street was set up based on unearned benefits. Because you see, up until the end of slavery, the primary generator of wealth in America was the back of a slave. When slavery ended in the 1860s, everything flipped over and went to Wall Street. Compete with what? What are you going to compete with? They keep saying, well, black folk can run fast and jump higher. That won't make it. It won't make it. And let me tell you what monopoly is. Monopoly means that all the wealth and power has been skewed based on skin color, going white, yellow, brown, black. And if you've never played the game of Monopoly, let me show you how it's played. I play it every year at my family. It means that everybody, when you sit down, you're given a certain amount of money and wealth. Black people never got their 40 acres and a mule. Now we're playing this game of Monopoly. And let's pretend for a second in this auditorium that whites got $1,000 to play the game of Monopoly. Asians got $500. Hispanics got $300. Indian got $100. And blacks got $50 to play the game of Monopoly. Now, never having gotten your 40 acres of mule, you don't own any land. You don't own any land. And if you don't have the money, you can't put in the houses and hotels on the land if you got lucky and had some. Now, when you roll the dice in our hypothetical game of Monopoly, and you roll the dice and your number comes up on the wrong piece of property, what happens to you? You must either go bankrupt or go to jail.
Black History Month, you find
ridiculous.
Why?
You're going to relegate my history to a month?
Oh, come on.
What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? No, come on, tell me.
Well, I'm Jewish.
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
Do you want one?
No.
I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.